Hello and welcome to a Stuff and Things episode. Today I'm doing a one shot. So the thing I would like to discuss is The Thing. So I'm going to be talking about The Thing. So what I think this movie does really well is that it really reciprocates how the human body can be twisted and molded into something that can be infected, that it can be changed and manipulated like putty or clay. And I really think that if you could do that, then I mean, really, well, the movie asks, what if you weren't human? What if something that was completely alien to you looked like you, but at the same time wasn't you? That's what I think The Thing questions, is that what if, some other forms of media does this really well, like Among Us. I know it's been done to death, but Among Us does go off of The Thing. It's about an alien who looks exactly like an astronaut, but isn't. And you think you could not notice the imposter, but I guess you can't. So, and also the characters, I find, like Kurt Russell, they're not exactly totally devoid of character. I mean, yeah, there are people that have certain attributes and certain traits, but they also feel like characters you care about a little bit. Like, I don't really want to see that character go, but you barely know them. It's not that you have any connection to them. They're there. And also what The Thing really does is have a great emphasis on isolation. Isolation, I think, is really, really important to the human condition, because isolation is one of the things we can't really get over. We need people around us. And they did this all the way back in... They did this all the way back in 1982. They did this all the way back in 1982. Joe Carpenter's little soapbox horror film managed to delve deeper into the human condition rather than something that is actually supposed to be meaningful. I can't really name any examples. Maybe if you can put some examples in the comments. But it's real. I think the Thing is not only culturally important due to the fact that it has interesting themes and interesting characters and interesting monster, which I think looks good in that film for the time. But not only does The Thing also answer certain questions about isolation, it also deals with the cold and how there can be a fear of that. I highly recommend it. Yeah, it's Jacob Geller, sorry. All right. So I highly recommend his video on it because he brings up some really great points, like the book How to Start a Fire. He also mentions The Thing, and he also mentions several other movies. But I just kind of wanted to talk about The Thing because it is a really fantastic movie. I would not recommend the prequel because that one is just kind of garbage. It's just kind of trash. Even though the CGI, in my opinion, looks good, and I think the actors do a great job, it's just not a very good movie because of its directing and its script. But in my opinion, the horror itself is not really a too interesting genre. People can fight me about that in the comments. I honestly think that if it's existential, then it's really good horror, because you can't really look at horror and say, well, it's just something that's gross or creepy, and, that's just it. But it has to look at something that is inherently human, that I honestly think not a whole lot of horror films do. Some of the recent ones, like The Exorcist or Smile or some of those other things, they don't really do it well. Smile, in my opinion, is not really it's not a cool movie. Even though The Smile is a really actually kind of horrifying thing if you look about it. I highly recommend Morbid Zoo's Babadook video on that. You can look that up on YouTube. That's Morbid Zoo, her Babadook video. But generally, those movies aren't really good because they don't do what they set out to do correctly, or they don't do it right. Now, I won't say that there's a wrong or right way to do this. Like, let's say I mean, there are plenty of unorthodox horror films. The Babadook is one of them, which takes horror from the lens of a child and regressing its characters to basically the mind of children. And I think that's really sort of something that we as people should look into, is our inner child and how that Babadook monster can, bring that out as something big and scary, and we're small and helpless. And also, I think that's the circle around to The Thing. The Thing does that too. The Thing is much more of a bigger boogeyman. It's much more of a literal one. It is an unknown enemy. An unknown enemy that you can't physically see or know that it's there. And this comes from the form of its changing shape. And yes, some people can say, oh, it's just gore. It's just gore horror. It's not really that big of a deal. It looks really cheap. It looks really fake. Everything is obviously made practical effects and like rubber masks and such. Well, yes, it does. But I think honestly people should look away from the visual effects of horror. I mean, if you take a look at something like Midsummer, which is not a really great movie either, and neither is Hereditary is an alright movie, but it's not a great movie either. If you take something like those two movies, they have some elements of supernatural horror, but they take something that's very physical and very real and bring it down to the level of it is scary. Like, cults are scary. Accidents happening to young children is very tragic. And even in the cases of The Witch, not The Witches by Ronald Dahl, that's not that movie, but The Witch, the one with what's her face? She voice acted Peach in the Mario movie. It's just gonna say that. But that movie, that has some supernatural elements, but it does tackle so many prominent things that were going on that century, like really, really toxic Christianity, which I do, as a Christian, believe that was happening, because there's a certain way to do Christianity, there's a certain one. I'm not going to get into that too quickly, because that's a whole other rabbit hole that I'm not going to get into. You could go somewhere else for that. But that movie does explain or delve into very, very real topics that are very, very terrifying. And I do believe that certain aspects of certain horror movies do tackle this, except they simply don't go into detail about it. And I honestly think that certain movies who do this very well. And if they do try and if they do very well, then they're very successful. Like movies like Get Out and Us and other films like that are kind of exploit the American dream. And they also sort of like deal with this goofy kind of racism where white people in Get Out are kind of they're kind of depicted as these strange like people. They're not really considered normal. They're kind of goofy. And the main character is trying to figure out, like, is this what people act like? Is this what they do? And throughout the movie, he realizes that no, it's not natural for them to do this, and that he needs to, like the movie says, get out. My analysis can be completely wrong about this, but anyway. So what I kind of want to project here, if you have an idea for a horror movie, then make sure you do your research, because a lot of horror movies don't. And I think that's what genuinely people kind of find them cheap, is because they don't really add to any experience. I mean, let's look at our our favorite. Let's take a look at Godzilla. Godzilla, the original Godzilla, is meant to be a horror film. A horror film about war. Now, already, that's our sentence already says something. It's a film about war. And you could just simply say, the film is about X. But really, it adds a whole lot more than just X. The film is about, war. It's about the tragedies of war. It's about the horrificness of war. And it's about if you do not stop, then you will destroy yourselves. And I think that's a very good lesson and good moral for people. Even though it's dark as heck, it's still a good comparison to make. Godzilla is a stand-in for Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He is a big, terrifying thing that shows up one day on their doorstep. It is really, really brilliant how Toho just made that out of the blue. And it's kind of amazing how Toho made that out of the back of their heads, because it's really apparent that Godzilla is a giant living nuke. He breathes atomic fire, he's indestructible. It's really good. Now, the first episode of Stuff and Things you can remember is about, Shin Godzilla and Minus One. Shin Godzilla and Minus One have similar messages. Shin Godzilla leans more into horror, while Godzilla Minus One kind of leans more into that monster aspect. Now, I'm not saying that both aren't equally good movies. Shin Godzilla is brilliant. It shows the kind of the meaning of how incompetent sometimes the Japanese government, and this is the nuclear meltdown that happened in Tokyo or wherever that was. But it's really apparent that Shin Godzilla is a natural disaster that the Japanese government can't seem to stop. And I really think that's really clever. So what do I have to say about Godzilla Minus One, other than what I've already said? The essence of Godzilla is that he is a force of nature. He is not a superhero. He's also not quite this dumb brute monster. He's also not super intelligent like the legendary monster. But he's just kind of he's a force of nature. He's not really supposed to go alongside Kong, because Kong is just a giant monkey. He doesn't represent the same thing as Godzilla does. And it's really, really kind of disheartening to see the MonsterVerse. I mean, I liked Godzilla King of Monsters. I thought it was a really good movie. And I thought Godzilla X Kong was alright. It was alright. But Godzilla X Kong New Empire, it's no, we don't need this. We don't need to go back to another era where Godzilla was doing all this crazy crap, where he was, just looming along, just walking along, doing his own thing. We don't need that. So, what Godzilla is, I think, really, really about is he's supposed to be some kind of destruction. He's kind of supposed to be that. Yeah, maybe not specifically the original Shin Godzilla and Godzilla Minus One Godzilla. Those three are supposed to be forces of nature. And that's really what I think Godzilla does well. So back to horror movies that do things with their movies. They do with their movies what they should do with action movies or comedy movies. They should have clever writing, clever characters, and even more clever ways to express what they want, the kind of fear that they want to exact in the audience, what they want to convey. They want to convey that you should be very, very afraid of what you're about to see. You should be stupid afraid. Stupidly afraid of whether it be Ghostface Jason, Michael Myers, like literally anybody. You should be afraid of them. And then there are some where you're just not afraid of them. You're just kind of like, what the actual crap? And I don't want to, I'm probably going to make another episode about this, about indie horror games. I'm probably going to make another episode about that. But I'm going to end it off here because I have a lot. I've had my time. Again, if you guys want more of these one-off episodes, they're about like 19 minutes. This one's like about 19 minutes long. If you want more about that, then leave a comment, leave a like, and I'll see you guys the next time. Christian from Stuff and Things, and yeah. All right, see you guys. Bye.